O'Mara is joining me outside the Senate chamber that he will soon call home. Senator-elect, thanks very much for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Liz. A little chaotic here this evening, as usual.
Yeah, I can see that there's some action behind you. Although, you were quoted just before Thanksgiving in your local paper as saying you didn't think that this session was going to actually bring very much of anything, and it looks like you're probably going to be right. What's the update in the Assembly at the moment?
Well, in the Assembly right now, they're talking about bringing two bills forward later on tonight. We're on recess right now, and both, unfortunately, are anti-business pieces of legislation, one being the very controversial moratorium on hydrofracking, and another one being extending prevailing wage requirements on utility companies for their service workers. So I'm not too optimistic. I haven't seen a draft yet of any proposed deficit reduction plan. The Republicans are here and eager to work on remedying the deficit that we have right now in the budget of about $315 million. And the Senate Republicans that are on recess right now as well are hopeful to be able to work on that and get this deficit cleared up so the governor can come in at least with a presently balanced budget at the time.
Okay, let's start first with the hydrofracking bill. From your comments, I come to take it that you will be voting no.
I would absolutely vote no on that legislation. There's three critical flaws with it. First of all, there's a de facto moratorium in place right now on the high-volume hydrofracking in New York State while the DEC goes through its supplemental environmental impact survey. Secondly, the legislation as it's written would preclude the traditional gas and oil well drilling that we've had in New York for 50 or 60 years. There's over 13,000 wells in New York. Over 100 or so each year are permitted and drilled safely, and they have been. This legislation, as it's written, would preclude that type of drilling from going forward, which will really run the gas industry out. Not that we haven't done a lot of that already with the moratorium we have in place.
Let me just ask, though, opponents to this say, to hydrofracking that is, say that it's actually dangerous to the environment, and a moratorium, the people who support a moratorium say it just buys more time, and two, you're absolutely certain that what happens, say, in Pennsylvania is not going to be happening in New York.
Well, we've already seen that things don't happen in New York the way they've happened in Pennsylvania. Our regulatory structure is already stronger than it's in place right now. This moratorium that they're talking about would only go until May 15th, and I've heard no indication from DEC, who I regularly check in with to see what the progress is on their environmental impact review, and I see no hope of anything going forward before that time frame anyway. So what this legislation will do is, I said, preclude the drilling that's been going on, and also it's going to give rise for a claim for the drilling companies to enforce a force majeure clause in the leases, which will preclude the current leases that may be expiring from expiring. The landowners want those leases to expire because these are the older leases that maybe don't have the most favorable terms for the landowner, and they want to be able to renegotiate more favorable terms under a lease. Or if you're really concerned about the hydrofracking going forward and you have a lease on your property, you'd want that to expire and then not renegotiate a lease on your property.
Okay, this is actually legislation that the Senate has already passed. So the Assembly passes it, and it will head to the governor's office, and it'll be Governor Patterson, who's the outgoing governor, of course, will make a decision. In terms of the deficit, the $315 million mid-year deficit, Shelley Silver, the Speaker of the Assembly, the Democratic Speaker of the Assembly, said 315 in comparison to a multi-$100 billion budget is actually a drop in the bucket. We could just address this when the new governor comes in, and that he'll be able to do it the way he sees fit. You do not agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that, and the information that I have is that Governor-elect Cuomo has been meeting and working behind the scenes to resolve this deficit, because as anybody knows that's involved in budgeting, the sooner you deal with the deficit, the more time you have to spread it over, so the impact will be less acute. If we start the savings now, then we've got the 5 months before the end of the fiscal year to cover that. The longer we wait, the more of a acute problem we'll have at the time that it's covered. Now we've got a little more time to spread that out over.
Now, you end up with a sort of split personality situation, because while the Assembly might be taking up some bills, the Senate will be taking up other bills, and you are sort of running back and forth in between them. So what was your day like today?
Well, it was hectic, and I started out this morning at a Legislative Ethics Commission meeting, which is totally separate, and that was both houses together in a bipartisan effort, and that those works were confidential, but that lasted a couple hours. And then I went to a luncheon with the Senate Republicans. I had a conference with the Senate Republicans with a reorganizational meeting where Senator Dean Skelos was elected to be the majority leader going forth next year, assuming the elections turn out the way we expect them to. And then I ran over to log into the Assembly. We opened up the special session and a regular session. Then we adjourned to conference. And then we went back into session, and then we went into recess, and we still haven't done anything yet. So it's certainly a crazy day running back and forth. And now I'm back over in the Senate side, just trying to get a grip on what's going on over here. And it does appear that when action is taken today, they're not going to match up in both houses, although the moratorium bill that we've discussed has already been passed in the Senate back in June.
Right.
So that would go to the governor if that indeed is passed, as would the prevailing wage bill for utilities that was talked about a little bit earlier, too. That's already been passed.
Let me
by the
ask
Senate.
you, the Republicans, and that would be your conference, is feeling very positive that they feel that they're probably going to end up in the majority. We have yet to see, of course, today we hear that there is a senator, a Democratic senator in one of those races down in Long Island who has asked for a full hand recount. It could take a while. Of course, Chief Judge Lippman says to us that he thinks it's going to be done before mid-December. However, let's assume that you are in the majority. It's still 32-30, and any senator who gets it into his head or her head that they'd like to hold things up can very well do so. Would you be willing to do something like that?
Depending on what the issue is, absolutely. If it's an important issue to my district or that I feel very strongly about on a statewide basis, then I will do that. I will hold my ground. And I think we've got several members in the Senate on both sides of the aisle that are willing to do that. But I think history has shown us that right before the Democrats took control 2 years ago, it was 32-30 the other way, and the Republican conference was by and large able to hold its membership together in a unified manner to still get business done that needs to get done. And that's what we didn't see over the last 2 years. It was just very chaotic with the Democratic leadership in there and having enough trouble keeping their own membership together, let alone then going to deal with the governor or Speaker Silver on issues.
Okay, but let me just interrupt if you don't mind. I mean,
sure.
You're speaking of the chaos in the Democratic conference, but from what you just said, you would be willing to hold things up. But that doesn't indicate that there would be perhaps some chaos or at least some delay coming down the pike if you, in fact, decide to act in that manner, or maybe you band together with one or two of your colleagues.
Well, it depends on what the issue that comes up, Liz. I certainly am not going to cave into something that I strongly oppose or don't believe in is going in the right direction for this state. Issues of importance for business development in New York State. We need to create private sector jobs in this state, and that's going to take reducing the size of government, reducing the tax burden, and the regulatory burdens that we have on doing business in this state. That's my number one priority, and I think that's the number one priority of the Republican conference in the Senate. I know it is the number one priority of the Republican conference in the Assembly, and I'm going to work very hard to do what we can to improve our business climate here in New York State.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Senator-elect. You, we should say, also are taking the seat of retiring Senator George Winter. Is he? I haven't seen him yet. So has he been talking to you a little bit and showing you the ropes on the other side of the House?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's up here today. He was in conference when I was there, and we've had a lot of discussions since before Election Day and certainly after Election Day on just what the lay of the land is over here, so I can hit the ground running. And I look forward to, really look forward to these elections getting resolved, so we know for sure whether we're in the majority, what the numbers are, so we can really get the business of New York State moving in the right direction.
Well, I have heard tell actually that the food is better in the Senate lounge. Is that true?
I haven't been in the Senate lounge yet, so I can't vouch for that. I've heard that as well, and I'm hopeful. It wasn't terrible in the Assembly, but it was the same thing day after day. I hope they at least mix it up a little bit.
Well, it is the People's House. I want to thank you very much, Tom O'Mara, for joining us.